The movie depicts a Norwegian hero's resistance to Nazism during World War II, centering on the true story of Jan Balsrud, a rebel fighter who evaded capture for over 2 months during the German occupation of Norway on April 9, 1940. Norway is occupied by Nazi Germany, and Hitler establishes Festung Norwegen. The German war machine moves to the far north, and the Allied convoys suffer enormous losses. In Scotland, 1943, Norwegian soldiers were trained by the British forces to carry out vital sabotage missions in Norway. After weeks of intensive training, Operation Martin Red was launched on March 24. 12 Norwegian resistance fighters set sail for Norway with their mission of sabotaging German airfields and installations. However, at the end of the mission, only one returns alive. All his comrades have been brutally killed. The scene then shifts to 3 months earlier, when the 12 men come under attack. The Germans spot them from a distance and sink their ship. 11 of them are immediately captured, but the final one, Jan Balsrud, manages to evade capture. Shortly after, he makes a run for it, and the Germans eventually spot him. They fire several bullets at him, until one of them hits Jan in his toe. Soon, blood is everywhere, and the Germans follow the trail to track the fugitive. However, Jan still manages to escape. After hours of fleeing, he reaches a lake at night. The temperature is freezing, and Jan knows he could die of hypothermia. But since the Germans are closing in, he decides to take the risk. Jan slowly enters the freezing water and swims away. Seconds later, the Germans arrive with flares and torches. They search the area but find no signs of the fugitive. Hence, the general concludes that Jan has perished in the lake, and they depart. Later, a high-ranking Nazi officer, Stage, arrives to inspect the 12 Norwegian soldiers. When he finds only 11, he questions the general about it, and the latter claims that the 12th one died in a lake. However, Kurt remains skeptical until he finds a body. So, he orders his men to search the area and find the 12th man. Elsewhere, Jan emerges from the lake, but his condition is critical. His face and other body parts are covered in ice. Despite this, Jan continues onward until he encounters a couple of locals. Fortunately, they are kind-hearted and immediately take Jan to their home. There, they provide him with food, warm clothes, and treat his wounds. Jan is fortunate to be alive, as if he had remained in the snow a few hours longer, he would have succumbed to hypothermia. Meanwhile, Kurt interrogates the 11 men for information about their plans, but they remain silent. As a result, he punishes them severely and executes some of them. Kurt is determined to find the 12th man, but wants to confirm if it's possible to cross the freezing lake first. Kurt volunteers to test it himself and immerses in the lake. He stays there for 20 minutes and concludes that one can survive the lake. Meanwhile, after Jan recuperates, he sets out to aid his comrades. A compassionate local ferries him across the lake and provides supplies. Jan, disoriented about his location, stumbles upon a cottage inhabited by an elderly lady. They converse, becoming fast friends. The lady tends to Jan's wounds and provides him with the address of someone who can assist him. After thanking her, Jan departs. He finds himself back in the frigid wilderness, with snow stretching endlessly. However, driven by hope to reunite with his comrades, Jan presses on. That evening, he finally reaches the address provided by the elderly lady. The occupants, a couple and their daughter, welcome Jan warmly and offer him sustenance. One day, the wife delivers distressing news to Jan. She reveals that a friend of hers, a nurse at the local hospital, informed her that several of Jan's comrades are being held there, mistreated, and some even dead. Upon hearing this, Jan breaks down and abandons his plan to rescue his friends, opting instead to flee to neutral Sweden, where the Germans can't harm him. Elsewhere, when Kurt fails to extract information from the Norwegians, he executes them all. Later, an officer informs him that they have searched all the houses in the area, but couldn't find the 12th man. He suggests calling off the search and reporting that they killed all 12 Norwegian soldiers. However, Kurt refuses, unwilling to deceive Hitler. Elsewhere, Jan arrives at a fisherman's house as directed by the previous family. The fisherman provides Jan with a boat ride as far as possible. During the journey, they discuss current affairs. The fisherman shows Jan a newspaper highlighting Stage, one of the most formidable Nazi generals, known for his bravery and success in apprehending prisoners. Kurt is now relentlessly pursuing Jan. In the next scene, the boat reaches the shore, and the fisherman gives Jan provisions and a pair of skis before departing. Jan puts on the skis and continues his journey, traversing dense forests and high hills until he reaches a small village. Unfortunately, there are Germans in the area, including Kurt. As Jan attempts to pass them, he stumbles and falls. Kurt approaches, initially mocking Jan's skiing skills, but soon soon realizing Jan might be the fugitive they seek. He quickly orders his men to call for backup. Shortly after, a Luftwaffe aircraft is dispatched, tracking Jan. It fires rounds, but an avalanche intervenes, burying Jan in snow. He is caught, and despite his efforts to escape, he remains trapped. The aircraft is forced to leave due to the avalanche. After many hours, Jan emerges from the snow. He is in a dreadful condition. His face is bleeding profusely due to severe frostbite. His nails have fallen off, and even his eyes are injured. At first glance, it seems as though a zombie has emerged from the snow. Despite all this, Jan still manages to rise. His body may be bruised and battered, but the determination within him is stronger than ever. Hence, he slowly traverses the white wasteland, hoping he can find assistance. On the flip side, Kurt learns about the avalanche, but he remains certain that Jan is alive. So, he dispatches some soldiers to the location. By this time, Jan is long gone, but his belongings have been left behind. The soldiers discover his garments, a map, and also his pair of skis. When Kurt learns of this, he launches a massive manhunt to apprehend the escaped fugitive. The soldiers go from door to door, interrogating all the families in the area if they have encountered Jan. They also threaten dire consequences for those found aiding the fugitive. Meanwhile, an unconscious Jan somehow manages to reach the nearby village, where a brother-sister duo, Marius and Gudrun, immediately come to his aid. They tend to his wounds, provide him with warm clothing, and secure a hiding place for him, as the Germans are frequently patrolling the area. After a prolonged week, Jan regains some of his strength and is ready to depart. However, as he cannot walk, the siblings, along with some other locals, place him in a sledge and transport him to a nearby cottage. There, Jan will have to endure solitary confinement for several days until someone comes to collect him. The initial days pass by smoothly, but soon he begins experiencing hallucinations. In most of his nightmares, Jan sees himself being captured by the Germans. He also finds himself entranced by a haunting melody. One day, upon inspecting his feet, he discovers that most of his toes are infected with gangrene. Understanding that the disease will spread if not treated promptly, Jan makes a difficult decision. He retrieves a knife and amputates some of his infected toes, enduring excruciating pain. However, this decision ultimately saves his life. After 9 arduous days, Marius finally arrives with his group and rouses Jan from his slumber. Together, they load him onto a sledge and commence their journey uphill. Later, they reach another checkpoint and conceal him under a large rock. Before departing, Marius assures Jan that someone will soon arrive to escort him across the border to Sweden. Unfortunately, even after several hours, no one arrives. Day turns into night, and the temperature plummets well below -20 degrees. Jan trembles uncontrollably, and it seems as though he is on the brink of death. In the subsequent scene, Marius and Gudrun are at home, deliberating whether Jan has already crossed the border. Suddenly, a man approaches them anxiously. He is the same individual tasked with fetching Jan 4 days ago. When the siblings inquire about what transpired, the man explains that he scoured the mountainous terrain but couldn't locate Jan. It's then that Marius realizes that they had inadvertently left Jan on the wrong mountain. Without wasting any time, he sets out to the designated location with one of his companions and extricates Jan from the dense snow. Though Jan initially appears lifeless, he soon exhibits signs of life. Despite being deprived of sustenance and hydration for several days, Jan has miraculously managed to survive while buried under the snow. Marius feeds him some nourishing soup and implores him to hold on for a little longer. In no time, a group of men arrive with sledges and transport him away. They journey for hours across the desolate terrain, but due to Jan's considerable weakness, they opt to seek refuge within a cave. Jan is apprehensive about the idea, fearing that they may attract the attention of the Germans and jeopardize the lives of the men. However, the leader of the sledge group assures him of their safety. Subsequently, the group tends to Jan's needs and periodically removes the infected portions of his feet to prevent the spread of gangrene. 6 days elapse, and when Jan finally regains some of his strength, the group decides to resume their journey. This time, they enlist the assistance of numerous reindeer, as there is a German outpost near the border. Their strategy is to create a diversion so that Jan can slip across unnoticed. After a while, the entire group sets out, with Jan loaded onto a sled pulled by the alpha reindeer of the herd. They swiftly approach the border, prompting the Germans to heighten their vigilance. Hastily, they scan the crowd with binoculars in search of Jan, but fail to discern him amidst the chaos. The plan seems to be working flawlessly until the rope securing Jan's sled snap, resulting in a painful mishap. The Germans spot him and open fire, but summoning the last vestiges of his strength, Jan manages to take cover behind a rock. Now, it's only a matter of time before he is discovered. With no other recourse, Jan retrieves his firearm and prepares to take drastic action. However, just as he is about to do so, the alpha reindeer approaches him. This revitalizes Jan's will to live, prompting him to discard his weapon and secure the rope around his hands. Then, he fires his gun into the air, startling the reindeer into a frenzied sprint. Together, they evade the Germans' gunfire and miraculously traverse the border into Sweden. Jan is overwhelmed with relief and jubilantly shouts while the Germans are left dismayed, unable to pursue him beyond their jurisdiction. They promptly alert Kurt about the situation, leaving him incredulous at his first failure. Fast forward to 3 months later, Jan has returned to Scotland. While he is mostly recovered from his physical injuries, the psychological trauma still lingers. One day, during a military gathering, he limps towards his general and submits his report. Jan is hailed as a hero for eluding the Nazis and retrieving crucial intelligence that eventually contributed to the liberation of Norway. Jan continued to train new recruits until Norway was liberated. In 1945, the war came to an end, and Kurt Stage met his demise in 1947 for his role in the atrocities. Marius ties the knot and raises 5 children, while Gudrun eventually married 20 years later. Jan Balsrud was honored with the St. Olav's Medal with Oak Branch and was appointed honorary member of the Order of the British Empire for his service. However, Jan never saw himself as a hero, as he attributed his survival to the men and women who kept him alive, believing they were the real heroes. Jan died in 1988, and by his own wishes was laid to rest in Mandalen among those who helped him. And with that, the movie ends. We hope you enjoyed our video. Watch the next recaps on the screen and don't forget to subscribe for more amazing recaps. See you in the next one.